Hello and welcome to Football Manager 2023 Roleplay, a project where we create a player using the FM pregame editor, give them a potential ability of 200, and see if you will become the greatest American footballer ever. Unlike many videos on YouTube, we will not be managing a club, and we will simply watch the progression of this player, Henry Marshall, from the age of 15 to hopefully his eventual retirement. This is a world-building exercise where FM23 provides the events, and we build a story around those events. Here's Henry's current slide, and not much different from previous ones, as Henry suffered a hip flexor injury and will be out another 11 days to 3 weeks. He has been placed on loan by Liverpool, but no club has made any inquiries about picking him up. We'll move up the calendar and we'll let you know if anything big happens before he returns to play. Welcome back. A few words. You'll notice in the corner that the date is October the 20th, 2025. Why is that? Well, have you ever let Football Manager run in the background and then you accidentally forget about it? Yeah, that happened to me. So we're going to lose a little bit of history, but I have enough notes here to bring you along. By August 20th, Henry was in the rehabilitation phase of his injury. Liverpool wanted to bring him along slowly to build up his full leg flexibility and strength. There was no rush. He didn't feel much pain outside of the stretching exercises. Since he wasn't playing, on the weekends, he and Teresa visited Liverpool Cathedral. The Teresa Hill wasn't religious at all. Now, her parents used to be deeply involved with an evangelical sect in Liverpool. But then her parents had a falling out with that church when she was 17. And Teresa told Henry that she used to actually be quite a goody two-shoes, a really devout believer in evangelical Christianity. And then she sort of went wild after the family left that church. And Teresa said, I don't believe in God anymore. As for the cathedral they visited, well, it was certainly a large cathedral, but to Henry, it wasn't Notre Dame. On the last day of August, they had a return date set for Henry, September the 7th or 8th. He would be made available to the under 18 players as well. He really needed to get back to full training as soon as he could. He was ready. But that very next day, September 1st, 2025, Barry Ludis, coach of the under 21 squad, called Henry into his office. Henry, have some news for you. Sunderland is now willing to negotiate with us seriously. We will probably know more today, but you should start getting your things in order. We think this is going to come through. Get your boots packed away. Trust me, you'll be better off in Sunderland. I think they were waiting for you to come off the mend. And now that we set a return date, they're champing at the bit. The Sunderland's not Liverpool, but remember, the people of Sunderland really love that club. So if you love them, well, you've won half the battle right there. He wasn't the only one going that day. That same day, Russell John, find Russell John. Here's Russell here. Russell John, we even gave him a face here. Russell John, who had been formerly loaned to Norwich, joined Nottingham Forest in the championship. By 2 p.m., it was in the Liverpool News that Sunderland was seeking a deal. By 2:15 p.m., Liverpool and Sunderland had come to terms. At 3:45 p.m., Henry was formally contacted by Liverpool's front office. He needed to agree to the deal. After a brief call with Hunter, Henry knew he had no reason to turn it down. By 4 p.m., it was announced that Henry Marshall would be transferring to Sunderland. There he is. So the next morning, Henry packed his bags for Sunderland. It was about a 3-hour drive from Liverpool on the west coast of the island of Great Britain to Sunderland on the east coast. It's a 168-mile drive, roughly northwest. He would have to deal with the post and the utilities and all the etc. later. He left early, he parked his car at the hotel, and was soon taken to the Academy of Light, the training facility of Sunderland Football Club. He went through the same procedure he'd been under 4 times previously. We know nothing new, typical physical. But it was different. He had handshakes with the staff, and he had a 30-second discussion with a man whose accent was so thick it was incomprehensible to anybody who didn't grow up in the UK. Instead of an electronic blood pressure cuff, it was a manual. They measured his body fat with some kind of clamp and took measurements of his body with a tape measure, old school. He was introduced briefly to some of the players working out in a training room with loud club music. After that, the round of photos and the new kit. They had given him number 3, which made Henry feel like, either they gave him the very first number that they had a lot of confidence in him. What was he supposed to say? The usual platitudes. Sunderland's a great club, and he really looked forward to playing in it. But aside from the documentary that he watched, he didn't know a damn thing about the place. He figured he'd better get to know it. He'd be playing there. He was then introduced to the manager, Dean Smith. Now, not the American Dean Smith, who was the Hall of Fame college basketball coach from North Carolina, but the UK Dean Smith, the man who had been in English football since the late 1980s. He introduced himself as someone who had also played at a young age in football. Sorry you had to wait on us. We didn't want to get a pig in a poke. If Liverpool were going to play you, we were certainly going to take you on loan. The championship season had already started. Sunderland played a 4-3-3, and Smith said, "We have a hole in the left back position, which is where we're thinking of playing you, and where Liverpool wants you to be played, and hopefully where you want to play. We're on break, so it's going to be 2 weeks before we can play, so we can get you sorted out here. Liverpool is sending their man to check on you, so talk to our staff, figure out things. I'll tell you what I think at all times, good and bad, and I won't hold back on either of those. Now let's get this club up, you and I." He spent a lot of his off time looking for an apartment. The pickings were a little bit slimmer, particularly around Sunderland, and it seemed that he would have to be resigned to a half-hour drive every day. So he pulled the trigger on a 2-bed, 2-bath furnished apartment in Gateshead, Tin and Ware. I don't know how that's pronounced. NE8, Northeast 8. A 30-minute drive or so back and forth from Sunderland. He'd only have to live there to June anyway. He didn't plan on luxury accommodations. He really just needed a place to eat and sleep. As for Teresa Hall, he didn't know what he was going to do about that. She was back at the University of Liverpool making up her failed work. What long drives back to Liverpool back and forth? Sexting? He couldn't think about that. On September 7th, the team physician came to see him and then spoke to his specialist in Liverpool, and he was cleared to play. On September 13th, scrappy little Salford City right there, Salford City, which had crawled all the way up to the championship level, came to visit Sunderland. 10 years ago, this club was in the 6th division of English football. They would play to a 1-1 draw against 5th place Sunderland. Marshall was the first man off the bench in reserves, but he didn't play. On September 20th, 1 week later, they would take on Luton. Now, this Luton game was a 2-1 victory by Sunderland. Two to one win on behalf of Sunderland here. And Marshall once again on the bench there. He was called onto the field in the 86th minute. This was a Sunderland home game, so Henry got some light applause from the crowd. Their man had finally showed up. Even if he only played for less than 10 minutes, he had a couple of accurate passes. He didn't embarrass himself out there, but he didn't get any kind of match rating from that game. He didn't have long to play the next game. Next game would be September 24th. The games came quickly. Fast and Furious against Charlton. This was an away game. That game against Sunderland, 2-2 draw. After Miles Lieber scored in the 81st minute, which put the home club Charlton up 2-2, Henry Marshall came off the bench to play in the 81st minute. I mean, his passing was a little bit ragged, but he didn't do anything to embarrass himself. He sensed that Dean Smith was treating him like a boy treats a kite, gradually letting out the string a little bit to see if it would go higher. The next game on September 27th would be at number 2 hole. And the result of this game be a 2-1 loss by Sunderland. On in the 79th minute. He didn't make any egregious mistakes. His passing was okay. You know, there were no critical errors here. But he was finally getting to play in games. And Henry thought that even for just a few minutes at a time, that was better than sitting in the game. This was Sunderland's first loss of the season, and the win put Hull at the top of the championship. He was starting to get used to the game, particularly how fast it was compared to the MLS. Let's see if we can start looking at some of the other stuff here. On October 1st, the USA squad was announced. Henry was informed he'd be playing with the U.S. national team again. He'd play in a couple of friendlies against Saudi Arabia and Finland. But before Henry could play any games with the U.S. team, there was one more game left against Blackburn Rovers. Sunderland was 8 position. Blackburn Rovers were number 5. And this was a 2-1 loss against the visiting team. Apparently, Blackburn's got some red hot form here. Let's see how that game turned out. Now, let's see. We don't even see Henry here. Where is he? There he is. First man off the bench. And he played the 86th minute in that one. He didn't get to do a whole lot. So after this game, Henry leaves the U.S. for 2 friendly games. And the first one is against Saudi Arabia on the 8th. And he actually gets an interview. He actually gets another interview with 90.com. Let's see 90.com. They are a worldwide website. 3 journalists there, located in England. So they called him up for an interview. He said they required good things about Sunderland. He made a few comments about the speed of the Championship League compared to the speed of the MLS. And he said that the U.S. couldn't and shouldn't take the Saudis for granted in the upcoming game. So what happened on October 8th? It was a 4-1 USA victory. And how did Henry do? He actually did pretty good. He had a 6-7. Note that they dominated this game pretty much over Saudi Arabia. Henry Marshall, he did leave hobbled up. He got a little bit hobbled up in the 62nd minute, so he left. But, the team didn't really need him at all. He had a 6-7 match rating. He had an assist on 1 goal. And his rating would have been higher probably if he had stayed in that game. Next game was another game in Hartford, New Jersey. Excuse me. This is against Finland. This is going to be a friendly game, but they failed to make their chances pay. The Finns tied them 1-1. Let's see if we can find Marshall. Marshall actually has a pretty good game here. Has a 7-1 game. Marshall has a 7-1 match rate. He has a couple of interceptions, as you can see right here, right there. Had a real chance to shine. He played the entire game, but the U.S. couldn't find enough oomph to win that game. So Marshall will get his sixth, and I believe that is going to be, yes, it's his sixth and seventh caps. Some major awards get handed out here. We'll go look at some of those here. Kylian Mbappe, he wins the Ballon d'Or, followed by Martin Odegaard and Eric Haaland. Jude Bellingham gets an award with Borussia Dortmund. They have two youth players. Oscar Glauc here is also a youth player. What if he's a new gen player? Let's take a look at him. Man, he's probably he's a real person. It shows you how much I know about football. And Giorgio Scalvini, Tottenham. So Allison of Arsenal. Excuse me, why would I say something like that? Of Liverpool. 32 years old, 28 clean sheets. Then by Donnarumma from PSG. And Justin Bijlow of Feyenoord. So those are the major awards. Let's go on to October 18th and finally catch up. A game against Peterborough. And Sunderland still in 8th position. Peterborough in 17th in the league. They really need a win here, and they get it. They get a 2-0 lead. It gets them on track. Peterborough is a very tough, straight-ahead style squad. And Henry Marshall starts this game, and he makes the Sunderland fans very happy. Has an 8-0 match rating. He assists on the second goal here by Oli McBurney. 8-0 match rating, an assist. Plays the entire game. Very, very nice game for him. And it didn't hurt that Peterborough's Jack Taylor was red carded in the 4th minute, which basically left Peterborough playing down 10 men for the entire game. Jewison Burnett, and he is a player who has been asking Sunderland for a new contract, incidentally. He was the player of the game. You see, there he is, asking for some more cash. And let's stop here for a little bit, and if we have enough time, we'll catch up. And just a few more items. Jewison Burnett has been named the championship team of the week. And we can see that right here. There he is, the only Sunderland player named on that team. We'll pick up on October 21st with Sunderland headed off to Norwich. Sunderland's poor performance leads to a disappointing defeat, and it drops them down to 10th in the Sky Bet Championship, a place they did not want to be. They were hoping to get in that top 6 position. They were playing the number 7 team in the championship, Norwich. Instead, they get knocked down. Now, according to XG, this game wasn't really close on paper, as you can see here. Marshall didn't start this game, but he came in the 4th minute unexpectedly. Hoping to get those individual player statistics up right here. He stays to the 84th minute, plays over 80 minutes of the game, 6-9 match rating, and he even gets a look at a shot on goal here. And after that game was over, the news came out that Dean Smith had interest in Marshall. He says, definitely some interest from our side, having him in Sunderland permanently. Can we do a deal? Can we make something happen? And then Jurgen Klopp says, no deal. I won't sell him. You can't have him. And after that, Smith says, oh, come on. We can strike a deal. Jurgen knows where I'm coming from. We just have a good understanding. We just need to talk. All this haggling made Henry feel really good. It looks like he had to actually go somewhere else. He had to go to Sunderland to be wanted. And that's the end of this episode. Henry recovers from his hip injury, but he gets a shock of his life. He's been loaned out. Well, not really much of a shock, but he's shocked that it really happened. That he's been loaned out to Sunderland. He didn't like the idea that much, but it turns out he's playing, and he's good, and he's wanted. That's music to his ears. Hopefully things will keep going well for him. We'll pick up more in Henry's career next time. If you like what you see, hit the like or subscribe button. Goodbye.